Welcome to Next of Kin, the podcast. I'm your host Emma, a British expat, toddler mum and business owner living in Dubai. Join me for candid conversations about expat motherhood, business and everything in between. I've invited some incredible guests to join me this season who you are really going to want to know about. So let's jump straight in. Welcome back. This episode I am speaking to Louise from Parent Prosper Coaching to help us all build a few more tools, tips and tactics to help us parent our toddlers. I know a lot of you listening are on a similar timeline as me in your parenting, and I have had so many requests for toddler tips, but you'll know I'm a little wary of any experts, so let me tell you why I invited Louise onto the show. Louise's background is as a teacher. She's been in Dubai 20 years, and in her own words, she said that she went into parenting overly confident. I'm not even a teacher, but I can relate with that. She actually found parenting super hard and triggering and found herself slipping into habits and ways of parenting which weren't how she'd like to be. So she went on her own journey of discovery, which led her to use this to help others. Her whole philosophy centres around the belief that parents are the experts in their own children. Hallelujah to that, if you've ever been told by someone else how your child is. I also shared recently a post on Instagram sort of joking about the advice that you see from experts on social media and how I just think that would only work on a very easy child, aka not my strong-willed little lady. Louise replied to that like, oh yeah, I am with you. So I'm excited to put your questions to her, as well as sneaking in some of my own, of course. Let's get into it. Louise, welcome to the podcast. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. How are you?
Yeah, doing well, thank you. Before we get started, please could you introduce yourself to my listeners?
Sure. So my name is Louise Hurley. I am a conscious parenting coach, mum of two, and I have a background in education, and I have evolved and pivoted, and now I support parents of sensitive, strong-willed kids.
Oh, good. I have one of those. So I'm going to have lots and lots of questions for you. Before we get into what you're doing now, though, I know you've got an interesting story because you come from a teaching background, right? And then you had quite an experience as a mother, which has led you to where you are now. So would you be able to speak to me a bit more about that?
Yes, sure. So I was a primary teacher for many years. That's my background. I've a master's in education. So I know a lot about how children learn and loved teaching for many years. And I was a good teacher. If I can say it myself, I was a good teacher. I had a great relationship with my kids. But I do remember not being able to fully understand when parents would come to me and say, well, she might be great in class, but she's not like this at home. Or, we have real issues at home. And I remember thinking, you just must be doing something wrong here. I never saying it, but really, giving a side eye, going, okay. And then I had my own child, and he was strong-willed, sensitive, not one of those easy peasy kids, prone to meltdowns. And I found myself getting really irritated. I found myself getting quite snippy and grumpy and feeling under so much pressure and snapping. And I didn't like how it was going. And I wasn't able to apply the same things that I had been using in school, which were all the classics like, there was kind of a herd mentality in school as well. School is a very structured place. We all get up at the same time. We all go here. We all sit down. There's sticker charts and there's reward charts. And so the environment lends itself. But when you're at home 24/7 with a little one, it's different and it's harder to hold those boundaries. So I worked a lot on myself. A lot of it was to do with me, I realized. I worked a lot of myself. And finally, after I had my second child, so I have a 10-year-old and a 2-year-old, after I had my second, I decided, right, well, this is the time to get out. I had learned so much and I recognized, okay, it's time to change things up. So I'm out of teaching now. And it's so interesting because the way I'm raising my toddler is miles apart from how I raised my now 10-year-old. And he's still getting the benefit of it now. It's never too late to pivot, but my approach was so different. So that's how I ended up here.
So in what way has your approach changed between both children then?
I think my expectations are completely different. I knew a lot about pedagogy and I knew a lot about child development in terms of, by 3, their movement should be like this, their language should be like this, but it was more academic. I didn't know a whole lot about the emotional side of things. I definitely didn't know a lot about brain development. So my standards for my now 10-year-old were really out of whack, and my expectations for him were not appropriate. And then that was like a vicious cycle, because then I was becoming frustrated, and then I was feeling guilty for how I was acting, and then mixed in there as well, I was also feeling like, well, am I doing something wrong? And then of course sometimes you say, is there something wrong with him?
Yeah.
You have all these questions like, is that normal? I think that's the question goes through everyone's mind at some point. Is this normal? And the reality is, vast majority of the time it is. And even if it isn't normal, we have to recognize that all kids are individual and you have to meet them where they're at. I think that was the biggest revelation I've had between him and the toddler. I meet her where she is and I move her along, but I don't pick a random goal and say, right, we're going to do this. I really focus on where they are first. And that's been groundbreaking. And it's great to have that approach now with him, because he's 10, so he's a preteen. He's excited about screens and puberty and secondary school. And so there's a whole lot of other challenges coming in that will require a lot more attunement from me. And when I say attunement, I mean being able to look beyond the behavior and look at what the actual need is. So that is a skill that you can use it with toddlers, you can use it with teenagers. And that's why I work with 2-year-olds to 18-year-olds. It's the same kind of skills and it can be applicable to all. So yes, it's been different.
Interesting. Okay. Well, I have a lot of listeners who have followed the journey with me. So their children are at a similar age to Bonnie now, who is 2.5, coming up to 3. And so I've had quite an outcry for a specialist in toddlers who can just give us some tips and things to try for ourselves. So
Yes.
let me get into my stack of listener questions. And let's be honest, a lot of these questions are just for me. It's my podcast, so.
Go for it.
I mean, firstly, though, what kind of struggles do you see most often from other parents that you work with?
I see a lot of people saying, well, they won't listen unless I shout. That's
Okay.
the first thing. They won't listen unless I shout. And then also, why are they just so oppositional? Whatever I say, if I say up, they say down. And the meltdowns over nothing. There's a lot of, it's very interesting because when you first meet parents, I always look out for, in their language, what kind of words are they using to describe their children? Because those are some of the beliefs they've cultivated about how kids are, and kind of interpreting their behavior. You always hear things like nosy, dramatic. We hear just drama queen and princess and little king all the time. So already I'm hearing a lot of the adults' feelings about these behaviors. So yeah, I think that the stuff that comes up is wide and varied, but not listening and that real defiance.
Okay. And so I'm guessing you then work with the parents to reframe that and understand the child better?
Exactly. So conscious parenting really is being attuned to the situation around you. It's like mindfulness. When you're stressed and you're worried, you're not in the moment. You're looking forward, you're anxious about something that potentially might happen, or you're dwelling on the past and you're looking at something that did happen and you're worried about it happening again. Mindfulness and conscious parenting is simply being in the moment, looking at what's happening right now and figuring it out from there. It's not allowing all of these other fears filter in. And those fears they're real. I mean, we have thoughts like, I need to get this behavior under control or she's never going to have friends. I need to get this behavior under control, or she's going to be cheeky to those around her, or she's going to be rude to other adults, and that will get her this bad reputation. So there's a lot of fear-based stuff. And then sometimes it goes the other way, where the situation warrants a little bit of empathy, but a parent can't give that empathy because they think, I don't want to coddle her. I don't want to spoil her. So we've got a lot of messaging flying around in our heads at any given time. So I don't work with kids. I work 100% with parents, and it's interesting because parents do come to me, and sometimes the first words they'll say is, "Fix my kids." And I have to gently say, "It's not your kids. I'm going to fix. I'm going to help you." As you said, reframe it. And a lot of it has to do with awareness as well. If we're not aware of best practice, and we're not aware of a little bit of neuroscience and brain development, then we can go off on this tangent of thinking that XYZ behavior is horrendous, when actually it's perfectly developmentally appropriate. But we've got all this messaging from society and from maybe our families. Families are great. They always interject with great little helpful pieces of information. "Oh, you didn't do that as a child. I would never have let this happen."
Yeah.
And it's not helpful, and it's also not accurate. So the big thing is, are you informed? Are you aware? So I try and build that awareness, and then we go through, I guess, some of the steps as to how to support you so that you can support your child.
Okay, so I have so many questions around this. I think part of me feels like it's maybe a bit of a Western world thing because we've got so many. I mean, parenting changes from, you've probably seen the way parenting has changed between your two children and what's advised and what's socially normal and acceptable. And so it's funny, it's like some of your work that you're doing is actually just reprogramming these paradigms people have in their head from their own families and society and that kind of thing. Interesting. Okay, well, let's get straight in there with tantrums then, because this is going to be the number one thing that we all seem to struggle with. Tantrums, meltdowns, whatever we're going to call them. We know that they are tough on us as a parent, and in the moment when you're just so overstimulated by it, you just freeze or don't know what to do, and you just don't have those tools. So I'm hoping you can give me some tips.
Okay, right. So it's important, first of all, to understand what a tantrum is. So everything in conscious parenting, I suppose, and really everything we do in life, we can look at it through the lens of our nervous system. So your nervous system has three basic tiers. We have our nice calm level here. This is our green zone, where it's a situation where we're able to have a conversation, we're able to interact properly, listen to each other, have a laugh. This is where optimal learning takes place. So this is why well-being is so important in school. If you have somebody who's dysregulated, meaning that they're not in that calm place of the nervous system, then they won't be able to take on the knowledge. It's true for adults and it's true for children. So you have this calm, but it's very normal to go up and down all day for adults and for children. So as we're going up this, let's call it a nervous system ladder, you go up, and the first kind of peak, I suppose, is that fight or flight response. What does that look like in children? Well, we know flight can look like running away. Some children literally are runners. And we know the fight can look like aggression. In older children, maybe they're able to control that a little bit more, and that might look like verbal aggression. And that's something that I think shocks parents as well when their kids get older, and the insults and the rudeness and that, "I hate you, you're the worst mom ever," can be so hurtful. But it is their nervous system that is dysregulated in that moment. Now, we're not supposed to be calm all the time. That's not the human experience. But as adults, our window of tolerance to this should be a lot wider than our children who have immature nervous systems. So we have our fight or flight, and then beyond that, we have the freeze response, which is very much a shutdown. I'm not going to respond. I'm going to freeze. I'm going to be non-compliant, but you won't get anything from me. I'm shutting down. And that can really appear like defiance as well, but they're actually stuck and they don't know what to do. So our goal as parents is First of all, to recognize this is dysregulation. This is not manipulation. A lot of us are told she's manipulating you. She's winding you round her finger. And it does feel like that, but it's not. They're looking for things. Yes, they're pushing boundaries. But when you hit that tantrum and that meltdown, there is a reason underneath the behavior. So if you imagine that this is the human brain, right? A child's brain, the bottom part of the brain here, that's like responsible for your heartbeat, for sweating, things that are not in your control. And then where I put my thumb here, that's the amygdala. So that's kind of like the thermometer of the brain. This is the emotional center. So it's constantly scanning to figure out, am I safe? Is this safe? Am I safe, or is there danger? And then when we put our hands over here, this is the prefrontal cortex. This part of the brain is responsible for impulse control, for rational thinking. When somebody says to you, you spilled the water, but it's okay, we can clean it up. This part of the brain goes, oh yeah, we actually can. So this is the rational thinking. The thing is, with an immature nervous system, this emotional part is going doot, doot, doot all the time, and it's misreading the environment. And young children are looking to you to co-regulate and bring them back down. We don't want to stamp it out. We want to help them go through it and come out the other side. It's like a muscle. The more that you exercise that muscle, the more proficient it becomes. And children need co-regulation 100% of the time when they are little. And when they're 10 years of age, they still need it about 80% of the time, which is kind of shocking, because we tell bigger kids all the time, go to your room, have a think about that. You need to reflect. And if they are dysregulated, they can't access this part of the brain. So we call it flipping the lid. It's a Daniel Siegel concept where they say that the amygdala peaks up and says, danger, danger, alert, alert, and then flips the lid of the prefrontal cortex. And now this guy is totally running the show. And that's why in the midst of a tantrum, you can't actually reason. You can't talk to them. This is when they're on the ground or they're whining. That's dysregulation. People get really kind of, oh, she's whining all day, but that's a lower level of dysregulation. And you can't actually reason with that. So I wanted to go here and it's not, but you can't say, yes, we are going to go here tomorrow and whatever else. That's not going to work, because this part is gone. It's just offline. And it's also worth keeping in mind as well that even on those moments where they're really calm and regulated, this prefrontal cortex is not physically developed until they're 7. And it's not, and it's not fully functional until they are 25. So that is a whole lot of dysregulation, seemingly bonkers mentality towards total logic. Myself and my husband now, just especially with the little one, we're like, we just look at each other and go, because we know there's no point. And where the frustration for parents comes from is, like you were saying earlier, because I have to go somewhere, because we have stuff that we need to do in our lives. But your children's agenda, as we probably all realize by now, is not the same as yours. And when this guy is in control, everything feels like an emergency. So how do we deal with a tantrum? Let's imagine that you're in a supermarket, which is the judgiest place, isn't it? When they finally flip out and you're like, I'm not adverse to the old fireman's lift if I can really feel like, gosh, they're not going to calm down here. This is ramping up. Even, I will bow to that pressure and judgment sometimes, and I'll say, come on, but I'll try to take them to a quieter place where at least they can do it a little bit in a bit of privacy. And then it's getting down on the floor with them, and it's just keeping low, keeping your voice like a sloth. We always say, keep everything slow and say, I know, you're upset. I know. And it sounds sometimes quite Americanized. I remember when I was training, people were saying, and like, I validate your feelings and things like that. And I thought, I don't know if this is me. This might not be me, but you'll do it in your way. I'll do it in my, heaviest Irish accent. And I'll be like, okay, pet, come on, come here, sit down. Let's just chill for a minute. And she will just sob and sob and sob. And you can feel the body softening. What you're doing there is you're co-regulating her through that. It's no longer about the packet of crisps that you didn't want to buy her. That's gone. And you can't even talk to her about that at this point. But you're validating everything that's going on. You might say something like, you really wanted those crisps, didn't you? I know, I know. And even at that, you keep the language to a minimum. You're just providing the space. And you can feel it in their body. It's tense. If they're in a fight, they're lashing out. They can pull, they can bite, they can kick. In that situation, you're holding their hands or you're stopping them from doing it, but you're not launching into a, no, we don't do that. No, no, because then you're ramping up there as well. There's emotion coming in. What they want to do is borrow your calm. And that's the big challenge, I think. It's not that we don't want to help our kids come back down. It's that we are so triggered by their behaviors, especially in those public moments where you feel like there's all these stories running through our heads. Am I a bad mum? Am I being permissive here? Is somebody looking, because we've all overheard somebody make an unkind comment, even if it isn't about our kids, like, what a brat or what a whatever. Are they thinking that about this interaction? So that affects our ability to be calm. And this is why tantrums are challenging. But, we're just there to hold space. If they let us hold them, because sometimes as well, I hear mums say, well, I tried to give him a hug and he doesn't want it. That's total dysregulation. Get off me. Don't touch me. You have to respect that. You'll say something like, okay, if you want a hug, I'm here if you want one. But otherwise, you just sit with them. And it's going to be the same for your older kids because those tantrums do not stop. And they're very normal. And, I think people think, you have a terrible toddler at 2 and you have a teenager at 3. And then at 4, hopefully we're starting to come out of it. No, you're not. You're probably not. And it also depends on the temperament of the child as well. Some kids are just really easily able to go up and down. Maybe they have a better predisposition to it. But you're going to have these ups and downs all the way through childhood. So it's really good to get your head around it when they're nice and young and understand what your triggers are. Many of us are hugely uncomfortable with crying. And if you think about it, it's because depending on what decade we were talking about different parenting styles and, that philosophy, many of us were raised with dry up your tears, stop crying. I'll give you something to cry about. Don't you cry. So that then creates dysregulation in us. When we see our kids crying, there's like this story from our childhoods. It's not even conscious, it's subconscious where we're saying, oh, crying bad. That we have really boxed emotions. Happiness, excitement, joyfulness, good, very nice. We love that. We dote on that in our children. Jealousy, rage, anger, no bueno. Not okay. Because of all the messaging we have received as kids. So it's such a fascinating area. When I work with parents, so I do one-on-one, I sometimes do groups as well. But when I work with parents, we actually spend a lot of time talking about the nervous system, but also what was your childhood like? And we pick apart some really interesting little nuggets where people go, oh my God, I've just realized every time I cried, I was sent to my room. No wonder I'm finding this so hard. And also people have challenges with their co-parent not parenting in the same way. So, right? So my approach is like this. My husband's approach is like this. He's had a different childhood. So his triggers are going to be different for you. And it's the same for myself and my husband. Like there is stuff that my 10-year-old does that will make me just go, oh my gosh. Whereas my husband will be like, what is the big deal? You need to chill out. That is nothing. And vice versa. So it's really important to make a coherent narrative of what you are both coming to the table with. It's about the work that you do in yourself, the personal growth that you have for yourselves. That's what's going to inform what's going on.
Interesting. This kind of leads me on then to a question that I got from a listener, which was how to say no while still avoiding them having an absolute meltdown. I think you're probably going to tell me that it's actually okay for them to have that meltdown, aren't you?
Yeah, because it's a normal response. We don't like it, it's inconvenient, all of that stuff. But I guess one way to think to make it feel a little bit easier for you is to recognize that no, she's practicing getting dysregulated and going at the other side. She will need to practice that. Let's imagine you are a permissive parent and you find it very difficult to hold boundaries because you're so intent on avoiding that tantrum. It's really uncomfortable for you, and people tend to go one of two ways. They either go into authoritarianism and they slap or they shout, or they really try to control, and that's their way of avoiding that big tantrum. Or they go the other way, which is permissive, which is okay, have it, just do it, just okay here. And neither are okay for a developing child. So if you're trying to avoid a tantrum, you can't, but you can preempt and you can begin to learn the signs of when things are happening, and you can start to bring some tools into play. So when I work with parents, we do a lot on, okay, let's build a toolkit of what are your strategies, your go-to strategies that you know will work for your kid and for yourself, by the way, because you also need to catch yourself when you're ticking up. So if I think about my son, um, quite sensory avoidant, doesn't like loud noise. So I will try to manage that environment. The first thing I'll do is say, "Come on, let's come over here together. Let's sit down for a second." Really tactile in the sense that he likes heavy pressure, he likes hugs and things like that. So when he's able for that, I will make sure that's available for him. So we're looking at that all the time. Whereas the toddler is, I mean, like her go-to thing was headbutting for a while. I mean, gosh, but she was headbutting, and we were like, I was like, oh, this is new for me. I've never had a headbutter before. But you either have a headbutter or you don't. That's the thing that they want. So it's trying to figure out, right, how can I meet those needs in a way that is safe, in a way that is not going to hurt her or others. So you'll start putting together a little toolbox of those things. You're going to try and preempt those spikes, prevent them from happening. But when they do, I know nobody wants to hear it, remain calm. And you don't have to keep talking about the boundary. I think a lot of people justify it the whole time. So while the kid is screaming, they're saying, and it's because it's not, and it's just not the time. Remember that prefrontal cortex is bing, it's gone. This is running the show. So you're just validating. You'll come back to it later on. I know you're upset. And the answer is still no.
Yeah.
Big reaction. I know. Loads of empathy. And the answer is still no. And they'll get through it. It's us that feels uncomfortable.
These days, there's sometimes those points where I am so triggered that I guess I freeze. I use that freeze response where
Mm,
she's lying there having a tantrum or doing whatever she's doing. And I know that I just have to shut down and I maybe just start cleaning or something. And I'm like there
really,
physically, but I'm like, if I try and interact, it's going to be a shout. Do you
yes.
have any tips around that? Am I doing an okay thing by just not engaging at that point, but being there?
I mean, you have to look at the two options. If you engaging means that you're going to shout and become like verbally aggressive or whatever, versus okay, I'm going to check out and gather myself here and do some rage cleaning or whatever it is that you're doing, then that's probably a better outcome for her, because you can say, I'm just going to give you a minute, but you say it to her. You say, Mama's going to go over here for a minute. I'm going to finish this off. I'll be back to you in a minute.
Yeah.
The idea is that we don't want to leave them alone in their emotions. So this is why sending somebody to their room or you go sit over there in the corner is not okay. But at the same time, yes, absolutely recognize when you are about to blow. So this is where you're building your sensory toolbox, right? So you're busying yourself here. That might be actually like a flight response for you. Like, I'm just going to make myself very busy here. Take a second. I know nobody wants to be told, breathe. Nobody wants to be told that. But the reality is, breathing is not going to work in the moment, because if it's the first time you've done it, then it's going to feel foreign and weird, and it's not going to give you the benefit that you want. This kind of work is done at other times when you are calm and you're building some kind of self-care practice for yourself. Is it box breathing? Is it running up and down? Is it getting some kind of sensory input? For me, I definitely go into a fight response. It's my natural tendency. I will just go rah, and start shouting. My go-to, honestly, deep breath. I said, I'll be back in a minute. And I will go into the kitchen. I will get a bag of peas and I will put it on the back of my neck. And I will sit there for a minute. And it just brings me back into the moment. I may have to do it more than once, but I will do it. It's my son that gets me in that moment more than my toddler, because he comes out with the very very personal stuff, because that tantrum it's more articulate. It's not just thrashing on the ground. It's very, I mean, I hear, you call yourself a parent coach, you're the worst parent in the whole world. And I just go, but you will build that toolbox, whether it is exercise, whether it is, cold treatment, whether it's going and washing your face, taking a breath, taking a glass of ice water, chewing on some ice, something to bring you back into the moment. The idea, you have to imagine your temper or your reaction, it's like an oncoming train. It's much easier to create a pause when it's further on down the track. So you want to be very tuned into your body in the beginning. Like when you got up this morning after not an amazing night's sleep, that's something you should be taking note of. And you need to be extra gentle with yourself today, because your dysregulation might not happen this morning, but by the time you get to the evening time and it's all built up, that's when you might have that response. So it's very much, this is where the mindfulness comes in. Check in. Where am I today? What is my tiredness level like? Where am I feeling it in my body? Am I nourished enough today? Have I taken space? Which is laughable, isn't it? We're mums. When do we take space for ourselves? But let me figure out what's going on. What can I put in place? What tools can I put in place to prevent that oncoming train that's hurtling towards me? Because it's there in the distance, but we want to put some roadblocks. The pause is what will prevent the explosion, even if it just buys you some time to choose your words wisely. Because sometimes we say things we would never say, or after the fact we think, like, God, I know not to say that to kids. I know that's not an ideal thing. Like, I'm not dumb. Like, this is sometimes where I feel when I'm making content on social media and I'm saying, please don't say this to your kid. Please don't say that to your kid. I feel like people know this. They know, but in the moment, it just goes, but. So what are we doing? What's the pause that we can create? For me, it's going and getting a bag of ice or peas and putting it on the back of my neck and saying, don't tell him he's a beep, beep, beep. That's what I will do, just to create that pause. And that's how we approach it. And so you have windows of tolerance to stress. Your window of tolerance is something to look at as well. Is it tiny? Do you blow up? I always think of people who have road rage. You ever seen them in the road and they're flashing the cars behind you? And I just think, how on this earth did you think this was okay? You're running me off the road. And you'll move. But I always think, like, gosh, imagine being that much on edge, that you're racing through. I've had people roll down the windows at me and start shouting things because they were overly stimulated. That's somebody whose window of tolerance is tiny. They're like trigger hair. So the question is more of a long-term thing. What are we doing to increase our window of tolerance? And then we're also looking at our kids' windows of tolerance. And what helps with building it up for kids is the co-regulation. What helps in widening the window of tolerance for us is looking after ourselves, feeling all the feelings that we're feeling, not beating ourselves up when we do put a foot wrong, because we do and we will, we can, um, and just a whole lot of compassion for ourselves, because we're very, very hard on ourselves, you know. Especially people who come to see me, they're quite conscientious already. They're very much like, I'd like to do a good job here. And often when you pick apart the narrative, there's a lot of, and I'm just not doing right by them. I just feel like I'm not doing a good job, or I feel like it's a lot of self-criticism. And we need help to let go of that as well.
Yeah. I need to talk to you about strong-willed children, because I think even when we talk about tantrums and that kind of thing, I remember when I was younger having a meltdown and just not being able to snap out of it. And I
Really?
see that a bit now in Bonnie. So the other night I had this, and in my head, I'm sort of going through like, okay, maybe she's tired, maybe she's this, right? Let's do this, let's do that, let's try and co regulate a bit, blah, blah. And I was like, she just cannot get out of this. Um,
Mm.
so, not even within tantrums, but I know me and you connected a bit on Instagram because I had put something up about when we get these parenting tips on Instagram and everyone thinks, yeah, that isn't going to work with my child. Like, how easy is
Yes,
your kid if that works? But I
yes,
imagine a
yes,
lot of the people that you work with have these sort of strong-willed children who are not just, they haven't read the parenting books. The children have not read the parenting books. They are not on the same
yes,
page as we are. So, any
yes.
specific advice when it comes to the sensitive, strong-willed children?
The sensitive, strong-willed children need their parents to be informed even more. Our tendency with them, because they can be so unpredictable and because they don't seem to follow a logical pattern, and the smallest of things will make them go pew. They're like fireworks. Um, they can be exhausting in the most loving way. I'm going to say this: they can be exhausting. They can drain you. And the thing about it is, when you're in that dynamic with somebody and it's a power struggle because they are strong-willed and they are sensitive and they are reactive, it's very easy to get sucked into this power struggle.
Yeah.
So, and you never ever want to get in a power struggle. You always want to keep things limber and loose. You can have your authority, but the second you become rigid and start saying, right, I'm putting my foot down here, the answer is a firm no, they will push back against it. It's like a knee-jerk reaction. So your listening needs to change completely. We often don't know how to listen. We when we listen, when we listen to kids, let's say, first thing we do is we interrupt them several times. We finish their sentences for them. We don't allow the processing speed, because it's slower than ours. We don't allow the processing speed to process, to move along. We often fill in the gaps before they've had a chance to finish what they're saying. So we just jump to conclusions. So you're telling me you kicked your sister, and you fill it in because you're feeling like it's urgent. And the other thing is, and I mentioned at the start, we engage in labeling and judgments quite a bit, even if it's just in our head. Most of us will know not to say directly to a child's face, "You're so dramatic," but make absolute no doubt we are saying it in our heads. I mean, the eye rolls. I say this. My 2-year-old is super feisty, and myself and my husband regularly are like, rolling our eyes to each other because we need to get that out of our system. But in the end of the day, we can't be labeling her dramatic. We can't be labeling her nosy, because what that does is creates a barrier between us and the goal of really understanding what's at the root of this behavior.
Yeah.
Because every behavior has, it's like that iceberg thing that is used for so many different concepts now. At the top is the biting, the pinching, the pushing, the shoving, all the rest. At the bottom is emotions, unmet needs, contextual situations like lack of sleep and being hangry and things like that. If we are sitting there with dramatic, drama queen, nosy, stubborn, strong-willed, if we have all of this in our heads, we miss what's going on underneath. We just put it down to she's just dramatic. So we're missing the opportunity to be attuned to their behavior. So your approach with the stubborn, strong-willed, sensitive kid is have lots of awareness about the nervous system, recognize that majority of this is not in their control, and don't get sucked into power struggles. Keep it as loose as possible. Watch your listening. Summarize what they are saying. Sometimes they come in, if you have anyone with two kids will know this, they'll run into the room and they'll go, she did this and he did that and whatever else. And it can be really tempting to start playing referee and instantly going, well, you shouldn't have done that and you definitely shouldn't have done that. I'm going to separate you and whatever. But quite often what they want, all they need is for somebody to hear them out, see them for what's really happening at the moment. So that looks like, okay, I'm going to listen to you first. And you have to imagine you're like the editor of a newspaper. They are the reporters. They've just given you Donald Trump's latest, whatever he's doing, all of his stuff. And they've just given you a blow-by-blow account of all of this. And then your job is to write the headline. So when you're saying it back, you're saying, so what you're telling me is Donald Trump lost his temper with da-da-da. Gotcha. Okay, let me hear you. So at least they have it, they feel like they're heard. A lot of times, that's all they need. I just want somebody to get me and understand where I'm coming from here. But when we're jumping in with a, hang on a second now, you didn't da-da-da-da, then we've stopped listening. Now we're trying to fix or we're trying to manage.
And that feeling heard really works even when with the 2-year-olds, doesn't it? Because I had Bonnie, she was freaking out the other day because she didn't want to go in a taxi. And I'm like, what? Like in my head, that doesn't make sense. Taxis are, they should be exciting because they're taking us somewhere nice. And she was saying, I want to go in our car. And I said, our car's in the garage, so we have to get a taxi. And she started crying. And I said, do you feel sad that our car is in the garage? And she was like, yeah. And I said, me too. I miss our car. And her eyes just suddenly widened and she looked at me. And then she just goes, me too. And like, it was kind of the end of the tantrum. And I said, I hope we get it back soon. And she said, I hope we get it back soon too. And that was literally the end of it. And it was just that she felt heard because she's sad that we don't have our car at the moment because it's in the garage. So as mad as it seems, just being able to like understand her emotions and say it back to her, that was it. She just walked off and started playing with her toys. I was like, whoa.
That's fine, thank you. All I wanted to say was this. And you perfectly got it. That could have gone on for ages. Can you imagine? You could have been pulling her into the car, spending so much energy trying to convince her, no, taxis are great, no taxis. And the reality is, maybe for her, she can't predict forward to the fun place you're going to. She's very much here, and maybe this taxi is just a bit weird for me. It smells funny, or who knows what it was. And you're just able to say, oh, you're sad about this, aren't you? Yeah, I am. And even as adults, we like this. I often think of a friend in college, and she was going through a really hard time. Something had happened, and she was sharing it. And another friend came to her and said, that must have been so rough for you. And she said, out of all the things that people said to me when I was going through this extraordinary hard time in my life, somebody really seeing me and saying, that must have been so incredibly tough, just made her feel so much better. Sometimes we just want to be seen. And that's actually part of a secure attachment. When we're raising our kids, we want them to have a secure attachment. And a huge factor in that is being seen and being validated. And that's where I see that you're sad, honey, comes from. But you do it in your way. You do it in that way, which was beautiful. That's wonderful.
And I'm sure plenty of people have found that in their own relationships, that whole wanting to fix a problem instead of just sitting with them and being like, yeah, that sounds tough. So how about we've spoken about the strong-willed children. What about our more shy children that we're trying to build the confidence in? Because for me, I'm trying to just maintain that confidence. She came out of the womb confident. But what about the children that you're trying to build up that confidence in?
Yes. You you have to allow them to express themselves unashamedly, and that's not going to feel um, comfortable all the time. But if you want to raise young adults who have a voice, who will speak up and who will advocate for themselves, then they will need to have practiced that in their childhood. So that means not being so obsessed with manners. That
Okay.
means not being, and don't get me wrong, my kids will say thank you for everything, but I will never ever say thank you. I will model it. I will say thank you so much. And then the little one will go, thank you so much. And I hear her saying things like, that's so kind of you to other kids.
Yeah.
And it's cute and it's funny, but that's because that's how we talk to her. So we're modeling that all the time. We're not going, what do you say? What do you say? We have It's about you having confidence in them so they can have confidence in themselves. A lot of people get really stressed out about their shy children. And the shyness, let's say in a school setting where the teacher comes and says, she's very shy, she's very withdrawn. Well, that means she's maybe not feeling 100% comfortable in that environment yet. And we're going to do that by making it more comfortable for her, by continuing to prove to her that it's a safe space so she can flourish and be herself. We're not going to we're not going to put undue pressure. We're definitely not going to refer to her as shy within earshot.
Yeah.
Um, you might say she's feeling shy right now, but when you say she's a shy girl, you're defining who they are. They're looking to you, especially up to the age of 7. They're looking to the adults in their lives to form their beliefs about themselves. This is why we don't say that, you're being really, that's you're a naughty girl. That's not okay what you're doing. That's, you were really mean. It might be referring to a specific behavior, and as you as their parent, they are not mean all the time, but they have this one moment. But to a child that's forming their beliefs, they will always make it about themselves. My mom is cross with me, I must be bad. My mom said I'm mean, I must be mean. And then they start living up to that. So it's the same with shyness. So if they want to hang close with you, let them hang close with you. If you inch them forward, but you always create that safe base so that they can come back to you. The other thing is, and I had a situation very recently actually where I had a mum come to me saying that their daughter was very shy, and a lot of it had to do with the behavior chart in school. And it's just something for people to think about in terms of behavior. You've got these little children who are on the quieter side, who are tiptoeing into the school situation and are being quite hesitant. And then the teacher has this behavior chart. It's the red face and the orange face and the green face. We're all supposed to be down on the green face. And this child has never moved off the green face. She was an older child. She had never moved off the green face in her, how many, 4 years at school. But she was absolutely censoring herself in class because she was afraid of that threat of moving up. It shows you how that perceived threat is not working for the high energy, low impulse control child who's up and down on the red face all day and he doesn't seem like he's giving a hoot about it. But it's affecting the kids as well, the other ones who are constantly on the green and who are now holding back because they're afraid to make the mistake. So that's the other thing. It's creating an environment where it's absolutely fine to make mistakes. It's cultivating that growth mindset of, look, we all make mistakes. Schools are really tricky places because you'll have, like I said, I think when I mentioned earlier on about teachers and who you get as a teacher is really important. There are some fabulous teachers out there, and they will really nourish and nurture your children. But sometimes these outdated methods are used, and it affects kids in ways that aren't great.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting to hear what you're saying, because I actually had a similar conversation with Rich recently, because a family member had brought up that Bonnie's naughtiness is from Rich. And this wasn't in earshot of Bonnie, and it wasn't meant any sort of way.
Yeah,
But I said, actually, we need to be careful about how we're talking about Bonnie to family members, because we don't
yeah,
want them using the word naughty around her. And when we have said that she's naughty, we're actually saying it in quite a funny, affectionate way. It's, when she's a baby and she's just doing hilarious.
yeah.
She went through a phase of just screaming. She did a month when
Okay.
she was 4 months old. She would just scream at the top of her lungs for fun. And so we'd be like, she's hilarious and naughty.
Yeah,
But actually, now that she's at the age where she can internalize that and can see what other family members are saying, it's like, we really
yes,
need to think about our language, because A, she isn't naughty, and B, she's not going to interpret that in like a funny
yeah.
kind of way, is she? So that's interesting. Well, let's finish off, because I think a lot of the mums in the toddler phase are probably going through these big transitions, whether it's to nursery or going into school. You start school earlier here, don't you? So do you have any tips for the mums that are trying to navigate those big changes with their toddlers?
Yes, definitely. If we're talking about going into a new setting, in a perfect world, this is a perfect world. It's by no means a checklist. You must do all of these things. Um, you need to start talking about the school or the setting before you get there. And by that, I mean a week or two beforehand. Talking about, and not specifically, you're going to have so much fun, there's going to be so much toys. They're not actually concerned about the level of fun they're going to have there. Believe it or not, they can go to a play area and have great fun. So it's not about, there's not enough fun in my life. It's about the safety. So you're going to focus your conversations very much on, so when you're at home and you need help or you're upset, who do you ask? That's right, mama, or you ask daddy. So when you're in school, who do you think you need to ask? And this is when you have, hopefully, I it blows my mind that schools don't do this, but then I recognize as well that it's a staffing issue. But you should have a picture of the teacher, you should have her name, you should have the TA's name and her picture, so you can show that to your daughter and say, this is Miss Claire. She is your go-to person. When you are sad, she's going to give you a hug. When you are, when you want to use a toy that someone else is using and they won't give it to you, she's going to come over and help you guys to sort it out. Like, to recognize, because we want them to start now forming secure attachments with other people as well. It's a normal thing, but they have to feel comfortable. So the priority is establishing the safety. The other thing, recognize that it's an emotional time for you as well, and that, like I was saying, nowhere is going to be perfect. I have criticism and I have worries for every single nursery I walked into. I go, maybe not this one, but I have to recognize it's my own anxiety as well of sending my little baby out into the world. So trust them, trust the teachers. They are such hardworking people, and they have so much to give to your kids. So make that relationship really functional and really strong. Make it very clear that we're in a team, we're going to work together. When you're dropping off, there should be a staggered start, really. So you should be going in half an hour or an hour, and then you're watching your child and seeing what they can cope with, and you're extending it a little bit. There may be tears going in. That is okay. What is really important is your reaction to the tears. Don't fall apart, at least until you get into the car. Don't fall apart in the moment, because they're looking to you to say, is this okay? Like, what is going on here? I'm really upset. And now you're really upset. There must be something bad going on here. So keep strong, make the goodbyes quite quick. So that actual moment of parting, hug and a kiss, and away I go. And I do not stand at the door looking back. It really upsets them, because if they don't feel like you're confident in the situation, it sets them back.
Yeah, absolutely. Louise, this has been so useful. How can people work with you going forwards?
So you can go to my Instagram page. It's Parent Prosper, at Parent Prosper, or I have a website, parentprospercoaching.me. And you can contact me there. I work one-to-one. Sometimes I run group courses as well. I should have one coming up possibly late August, early September. And if you are concerned about school and starting school, I'm thinking of putting something together for those parents as well this summer. So just keep an eye on my Instagram page and something might pop up.
Amazing. I'll add the links to the show notes as well. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
I don't know about you, but I kind of wish I had this conversation earlier because I feel like it started to rewire a few things in my brain. Even just that reframing of the tantrums and seeing it as more like a learning opportunity for them and less like a personal attack on you. But please do go and check out Louise and share this podcast with any friends who you think may be in need of some support with their toddlers. As always, you can find us on Instagram at nextofkin.ae or follow my personal one at emmacoulter.insta. Till next time, take care.